Hello and welcome to Ditching Hourly. I'm Jonathan Stark, and today I'm joined by guest Ant Pugh. How are you doing, Ant?
I'm good, thanks. How you doing?
Excellent. So before we get started, could you tell folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I'm a learning consultant based out of Newcastle, which is a small city about 2 hours north of Sydney on the east coast of Australia. And I help companies avoid implementing expensive training solutions that don't achieve their business goals. And I've also recently launched a community called Propeller, where we support learning and development professionals who want to build a profitable freelance business whilst honing their craft.
Oh, I love that name. You could have merch, little propeller head hats.
We've already thought them all through. We've got a big long list of things that we want to create.
I love that. Cool. Okay. Well, the purpose of this particular discussion had its origins in my coaching Slack, where you asked a question. Maybe you could kind of paraphrase the question for people just to set the context.
Yeah, of course. So we have a lot of freelancers in our community who are either just getting started and to give some context, they're probably quite confident in their expertise. So they might be either an instructional designer or an e-learning developer or kind of a training consultant of some description. And they're feeling pretty confident with the expertise side of things, but they don't have any expertise when it comes to starting a business. And so they're taking this skill or this expertise, and they're trying to turn it into a profitable business. And obviously, the most common way for people to do that is start off quite general, especially in their marketing, and then either niche down in the future. And one of the questions I get a lot is how do I find more clients? And the advice that I've been given is has been to either pick a market vertical, which I understand is called niching, or another tactic or another strategy for marketing would be to focus on a specialization, which for them would be their core skill. And a lot of these guys, they don't want to necessarily deliver end-to-end solutions for clients. They just want to focus on their expertise. So a good example might be the technical development of an e-learning course, which is very technical. It's a case of you're building a solution, but they don't necessarily want to get involved in the steps ahead of that, which might be the needs analysis, the diagnostics, or the script writing and the storyboarding. And so logically, it would suggest to me that it would be more sensible for them to specialize, because they can create marketing material about their area of expertise. And my gut feeling was that if they are niching, like picking a market vertical, a typical client who is looking for a complete solution, like they might be looking for a training solution, they wouldn't necessarily be looking for somebody just to do one small part of the process. They're looking for somebody to do the whole thing. And therefore that's where my logic was going, that that these guys should probably focus on specializing, focusing on their skills rather than focusing on a market vertical. But I'm happy to be told otherwise.
No, that was great. Great background. Okay. I've already taken notes.
Okay, good.
Okay. So let's start big picture, really big picture, and talk about what's the point? The whole point of this conversation is to figure out how to get more, better clients. So you've got So that's what we're gonna explore here: how to get more, better clients. And there are two axes on the table that we're talking about right now, and they are independent. So, and they're blurry. The terms are used even by me sometimes in a blurry way. So let's get really specific for the purpose of this conversation. There's specializing, which is about your skills. They're like superpowers, or you could think of it like your resume, the kind of stuff you put on a resume, the stuff that's easy for you, that you're natural at, that you're great at. Maybe you you put in your 10,000 hours and you have a sense of mastery over these skills. And that's specialization. You're getting really specific. You're becoming an expert at something, whether it's e-learning or martial arts or guitar solos. And then there's another axis, which is niching, and that is focusing on a particular target market to create value for using whatever your superpowers are. And or not even superpowers necessarily. Maybe you're a complete generalist. Maybe you're a complete full stack web developer, or you're I don't know, tell me something from your world, e-learning world, that's a complete generalist. Like, you tell me.
Well, there are a lot of people, myself included. When I first started my freelance business, I was a very kind of excuse me, I was an end-to-end e-learning developer. So I would market myself as being somebody who would do the whole thing right from start to finish. I would do your diagnostics, I would do the instructional design, I would do the technical development, I would do the graphic design, and then I would evaluate the project at the end of it. So that's the kind of end-to-end process.
Great.
I wasn't confident necessarily in all of those skills, but I kind of, I could get by in enough of them to fill in the gaps.
So sort of a full-service e-learning firm.
Exactly, yeah. And I would say the majority of businesses out there who deliver these types of solutions are marketing themselves as that.
Okay. So that, even though e-learning is it seems probably pretty specific to people listening to me, I think that's still a pretty big pond. I think there's probably a lot of competition in that pond. There's probably a lot of apples to apples comparisons. It doesn't full service e-learning agency, let's say, it's not super specialized. It's I would maybe call it specific, but still it's like e-learning. Okay, that's a big category. It's kind of like saying education. It's a huge category.
I totally agree. I think I think you could compare it to web design. I think it's a huge industry, and there's a huge amount of people out there doing it.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're in agreement there. So that's not very specialized. So if you imagine someone who's like a full service e-learning consultancy or firm, then and you want to stay kind of general in that, and you like all those things. Maybe you are really good at all those things, or you have a team that fills all of those roles and does a really good job of it, and you've got a great process, and it's really optimized, and you can deliver amazing stuff for inexpensively, all things considered, because you've optimized it and it's like a well-oiled machine. Well, so that's pretty general on the specialization access. And if you just offer that to anyone who wants a full service e-learning consultancy, your niche or your target market is essentially everyone. And you're blurry in both of those axes, which in my little diagram I'm drawing here would put you in the bottom left corner. And when you're in the bottom left corner, selling generalist services to everyone or anyone, it's very difficult to get more better leads. Very difficult, because almost certainly there's nothing that differentiates you from the next full service e-learning consultancy. So the only meaningful difference between the two providers is probably price. So then you end up in price competition, which is the last place anyone wants to be, most likely. I mean, theoretically, you could be like Amazon and want to have razor thin margins and just beat everybody on price and win by getting a massive amount of market share and scaling up so that you can cover your operational costs with this tiny margin by having millions of clients or whatever. Highly unlikely that any service provider is looking to do that. Most likely people want to sell higher price services, get a bigger margin by reaching clients who value what they do more, and therefore are happy to pay higher prices and not hire the cheapest. So if you imagine like an Etch-a-Sketch, do you know what an Etch-a-Sketch is? I don't know if that's a generational thing. Okay.
Yeah, no, I do.
All right. So if you imagine an Etch-a-Sketch, it's got these two white dials on the red thing, and it's got the gray screen, and you can dial these two dials and move the pointer all around the sort of playing field, all around the rectangle. And I think it makes sense to dial. I think these two things, specialization and niching, I think you can over dial. I think if you turn both dials all the way to the right, you're going to end up in the top right-hand corner of the Etch-a-Sketch, and you're going to be niched down to a single individual on planet Earth. And your specialization is like hyper specific. And that job or that engagement looks a lot like the guy that massages Jeff Bezos's back, like Jeff Bezos's private masseuse. Like that's super specialized. It's not even that specialized. Rubs his feet. You know what I mean? Gives him pedicures. Like I give Jeff Bezos pedicures. That's my job.
Yeah.
That's maximum niching because it's one person out of 7.5 billion or wherever we're at now. And you just do this one hyper specific thing. It probably even like foot massage, probably not even like reflex, like pedicure reflexology or like something crazy specific, you know, acupuncture for Jeff Bezos and nobody else. So that's probably over specialized, especially if you haven't landed him as a client. So if your mission in life is to be, you know, Jeff Bezos's acupuncturist, let's say, honestly, now that I say that out loud, it doesn't sound impossible, but it probably would pay really well. Like that might be okay. But in general, you probably don't want to over focus on both specialization and niching. I think you can go too far if you go extremes in both directions, just in general terms. So what does make more sense? If you're turn both of the dials all the way to the left, you're in the bottom left-hand corner of the Etch-a-Sketch, and you are a generalist selling to everyone. We already talked about that, and that's where most people operate when they're first starting out. And you know very well, probably anybody listening to this who's in their first year or two, that if you're just like, oh, I can do anything you want. If you need anything on your website or the back end or the front end or AWS or Azure, or if you need anything that has to do with somebody typing code into a computer, I can do it. Anybody need someone to type into a computer for them? Oh, no answer. You know, it's like it's really hard for people who would potentially pay you money to connect the dots between your skill, even if it's general, it's still web stuff is pretty general. They don't understand that stuff, so they don't know that they need you. You need to connect the dots for them. So if they're not experts at what you do, then you need to speak in terms that they will understand. And let's talk about this for a second. Let's riff on speaking in terms that people understand. If I am trying to reach a Spanish-speaking market, it doesn't make tons of sense for me to speak, I don't know, in Mandarin. Like I would probably want to pick the language of the people that I speak, the literal language of the people that I'm trying to connect with. So at the highest level, like if I'm a comedian and I'm telling jokes in English to an audience that doesn't speak English, the jokes, I might say, those jokes were hilarious, but no one laughed. What's going on? They didn't understand them. They don't understand the language that you're using. The same applies when you're using jargon from your industry to people who are not in your industry. So if you say something about technical debt to a guy that runs a shoe store, you know, is not going to get it. So maybe you both speak English, but you're speaking different, air quotes, languages. So the benefit of niching down is that you can learn the language of a particular target market. And it could be, like you said, it could be a vertically defined target market where they're all dentists, or it could be a demographically defined target market like CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, or people who live in this zip code, or soccer moms who have 3 kids, demographically defined, or it could be psychographically defined, like environmentalists or optimists or people who believe that the world is flat. So there are all of these tribes, if to use Seth Godin's term, there's these people who are, and any person can be in multiple ones of them. You know, you can be in a bunch of different tribes, but there's a language inside of the tribe. Almost always there'll be some kind of jargon, there'll be some kind of commonality that pulls all the birds of a feather together, and they can tell when someone who's not in the tribe is talking to them because the person who's outside of the tribe doesn't use the right language. They'll say stuff that doesn't make sense. So as a provider who wants to learn the right language of a group that they want to serve, and they want to communicate to them the benefits, they need to learn the language of the people they're trying to reach. So they need to learn Spanish if they want to reach Spanish-speaking people. Or if you want to reach people who are, I don't know, in the Methodist Church, you need to understand what they care about and how they talk about things. And you need to use their language to connect the dots between what they want and what you do. So you can't go into like I said, a shoe store, and somebody like, you know, they have a terrible website, maybe you needed your shoes repaired and you went to a website and you searched Google and you found a local shoe store and their website was awful. You happen to be a web developer and you go in there and start talking about like usability and technical debt and HTML5 and responsive web design. They're just going to stare at you like you have three heads. So you need to figure out language that they use to describe what they want, and then if there's a fit, then you can connect the dots between the kinds of results that you can deliver and the kinds of things they want. And if there's overlap between the results you can deliver and things they want, boom, you're in business. And then so I'm soapboxing a little bit, but this is the whole point of niching down, is that if you pick who you're talking to, then you can use their language to connect the dots between what they want and what results you can provide. And so you don't talk about your craft when you're niching down, and you can actually be more general, less specialized, because it doesn't matter. They don't care. They don't know that you're not going to introduce technical debt and you're going to do, responsive web design. They don't care. They just want to know that their phone is going to ring more and they're going to sell more shoes or they're going to have more cobbler jobs. So if you dial, so back to the Etch-a-Sketch, if you dial the knobs, if you take the left knob, I'm not sure if I'm doing the clockwise thing right. I think well, now I'm lost. But if you dial the pointer up to the top left of the Etch-a-Sketch, then you'd be super duper niche down and not very specialized. So you could be like a web person, or you could be an e-learning person. You're like kind of a web guru or an e-learning guru, and you know what you're doing. You've got maybe you're really good at one aspect of the e-learning stack, but you're pretty good at most of it. Maybe you're really good at front-end web design and you're like a master of React.js or something. And you're pretty good at the other stuff. Like, how to spin up a backend, you spin up an EC2 instance and stand up a server and stuff like that. But you're kind of a generalist. Maybe you're T-shaped. You've got one thing that you're really good at superpower-wise or specialization-wise. But it doesn't matter, because if you're niched way down and you're way at the top left of the Etch-a-Sketch, those folks, they just care about results. And like, here are the things that I want. Is there some way that you could help me get to them? So then you can say, yeah, I know exactly how to do that. Okay, so that's sort of the top left corner. And then just to finish the conversation, and then I'll shut up and I can see if I've made any sense at all. If you dial it down to the bottom right corner, you're like hyper specialized. But you're not niche down at all. You do whatever you do what you do for people who want what you do. So this is actually really attractive to a lot of people, and a lot of people who are in the bottom left corner think this is what they're doing because they're like an e-learning specialist or they're an e-learning consultant, and they're like, that's pretty specialized. I mean, think of all the different things out there in the world. I'm pretty specialized. But if you're just one of many e-learning consultants, and they can, a client who doesn't see a meaningful difference between Alice and Bob, who both says e-learning specialist on their, or e-learning consultant or e-learning guru on their LinkedIn profile, they're going to pick the cheapest one, or they're going to find three and pick the middle one. So they don't see a meaningful difference between anybody because it's actually a really big pool. It's not a small pond. So on the bottom right-hand corner of the Etch-a-Sketch, when you get hyper focused into your niche, not niche. If you get hyper focused into your specialty, and you just plan to get hired by people who need your specialty, then your mission is actually it's easy in the sense that you get to go nuts drilling down into this thing that you love. Whatever superpower you have or skill that you have mastered, you get to go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. Maybe farther than anybody else in the world has ever gone into this specialization. So you're hyper specialized. You're the kind of person, well, before we get there. And then if you become more and more famous globally as the go-to person for that specialization, and anybody cares, then you'll start to attract clients from all walks of life. There'll be no pattern to what tribes they're in, probably whatsoever. It's really the niche, or the lack of niche, is people who need the thing that you do. So this could be something like I was looking for someone like this a couple of weeks ago. It was an offline first mobile web application specialist. There are not a lot of people like this who are globally recognized as someone who understands how to do offline first mobile web apps using service workers that's going to work on mobile phones. There are probably, I'm just going to take a wild guess and speak, between 1,000 and 10,000 people who know how to do it, but I could only find about 7 people in the whole world who appear to know how to do it. And what did I do? I searched for books on the subject, like somebody who wrote an entire book on offline first PWAs or service workers, offline service workers, or the people who wrote the spec for the W3C. And I connected, I think it was about 6 or 7 people, might have been 8. And I found one and I paid whatever he wanted. But how often is he, is that specialization? Do enough people care about that hyper specialization to attract enough, to get more better clients? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But, all of these quadrants have pros and cons. I think the top left, where you're hyper niched down into a very, very, very specific kind of buyer, is I don't want to say easy, but there's a pretty clear path, and it has and you get lots of feedback, which allows you to correct along the way. Top left corner. Bottom right corner is also a pretty straightforward path. Like, what you need to do is pretty straightforward, but you don't get a lot of feedback along the way. And so, like, after 2 years, maybe it didn't work and you got no feedback about that along the way. It's kind of like it doesn't work forever until it finally works, and then you're like a rock star. It's like being discovered overnight after 10 years of playing in a rock band. And then the bottom left corner is terrible. It's where most people operate. And the top right corner is more of a job and less of a career. It's more like you're an employee and not really a consultant or a freelancer or an independent person. Oh, okay. So that was a lot. I wonder am I making any sense? Is any of that making any sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And it actually aligns with my thinking before we even started talking. So I'm glad we're on the same page, and I am kind of going in the right direction with this. I think the major query I have, though, when it comes to this, is that the example you gave there was somebody or a company who's offering a full stack of services. So they're very generalized. They pretty much say, we'll do the end-to-end solution. And it makes complete sense to me that picking a market vertical for that type of company would make complete sense. And it would probably be a faster path to finding clients, because they can do outreach. They can proactively go and find those types of clients. Whereas the specialization strategy, I totally appreciate that, they're going to be focusing their marketing efforts on, showing off their expertise and eventually writing that book and getting to the place where you are one of 8 people in the world and getting people to pay anything that they want to have your services. Mm-hmm. But then what that doesn't take into account is the person who doesn't necessarily want to be that full stack service. So if you think about a typical freelancer rather than a kind of an agency, they might be able to do, I think the example you gave, they might be like a front end developer, but they can also do the back end and they can do the servers. And, I'm not techie when it comes to web stuff, but I can apply that same logic to my industry. And that's very similar to me. Like I focus very much on the needs analysis at the beginning of a project. So trying to diagnose a client's real need for training, which is usually the part that gets skipped through, and a client will decide, they'll have self-diagnosed that training is the solution that's going to solve all their problems. Mm-hmm. And the freelancer or the agency that they contact will literally just build what they've requested. Mm-hmm. And it'll look great and it'll, tick all the boxes, but actually it won't actually fix the problems that the client is looking to solve. Mm-hmm. So, in my example, I am yes, I could do all of it, but I'm very focused on one piece of the jigsaw, if you like. And this is what's happening within my community. We've got instructional designers who just like writing the storyboards, who just like doing the scripting. We've got e-learning developers who just like building this from the script or from the architect's plans that have been laid out for them. Mm. And so in those examples, and this is where my kind of question lies, is if I was an e-learning developer, right, I just like I probably could get by and do the needs analysis, and I could probably figure out how to do the scripting, but it's not my area of expertise. I have no interest in hiring other freelancers to do that part of the job, for the project for me. I just want to find projects where I can do my expertise. And your answer might just be, look, go and get a job. But that if they've decided that freelancing is for them and they want to kind of pursue that mission, that's where my confusion lies, because I feel like in that situation, let's imagine I'm just doing the technical development. Let's imagine I niche and I say, right, I'm just going to serve, I don't know, I'm going to focus on designing e-learning for charities. Let's say that's my market vertical.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In that scenario, a charity might come out, a training manager at a charity might come over and get out on the internet and be like, right, I need an e-learning solution. They'll Google, e-learning. They'll read a blog post about somebody who's, this e-learning, this technical developers wrote a blog post about how his e-learning solution solved problems for a charity. That company is going to be looking for somebody who can do everything. They're not looking for somebody who can just do the technical development. They're looking for somebody to do the whole end-to-end solution. And that's where my confusion lies, because it's very difficult then for that. And I would assume it's difficult for that developer because the point being is if that company, if that charity wants somebody to do the whole end-to-end solution, and they're looking at this freelancer who's, look, I can build your e-learning, but you're going to need somebody else to design it. That's not a good fit, right? So that's where my confusion lies.
All right, so you touched on a million things there that are all really good threads. So let's start here. I love playing the drums. Do you want to pay me to play the drums?
No.
No. Is there any value in me playing the drums for you?
No.
There's probably no drum. If you heard me play the drums, there's probably not a single person on planet Earth that would pay me to play drums, because I suck at drums. I just love doing it. Even if I was amazing at drums, there's a lot of other people that are amazing at drums. But let's just say I stink. Let's just say I love it, but I'm like intermediate at best. Maybe no one wants that. It's possible that what you do, no one wants. Mm-hmm. That is a possibility. But let's just rule that out for the time being. Like, even though it was really hard for you to learn drums and you're really good at, let's even go farther down this drums rabbit hole. Let's say you're amazing at playing drums, but you don't want to leave your house. You just want to play drums in the basement. It's like, hey, everybody, I'm great at playing drums in the basement. I am amazing. I can play like the entire, Rush album, all the Rush albums from beginning to end in real time. You want to watch? And no one does. No one does. That's weird. And so you're cutting, and by not wanting to leave the basement, you're cutting yourself off from session work, touring work, Broadway type stuff, all these other things. You're putting all these limitations. I only want to do my thing in my way, and I'm going to be a prima donna about it and expect the world to come to my door and pay me money because it was really hard to get this good at playing all of the Rush albums. So yeah, there's a possibility that someone just is being unrealistic about the value of their skills. So like, if you enjoy basically what you have there is a hobby. So you do this thing that you love. No one cares. No one wants to pay you for it. No one can connect the dots between this thing that is objectively impressive, but delivers no results. So if you're expecting people to pay you money, you better be able to give them results. So now back to your, did you say like a storyboarding person? I only want to do storyboards. That's all I want to do, storyboards.
Yeah, that's what I would call the role of an instructional designer.
Okay, so I just want to do storyboards. What kind of results can a person who does storyboards provide? Results?
Yeah, on their own, nothing.
Nothing. No, nothing? I don't believe that.
Well, the storyboard could then be used. So a client could hire somebody to build a storyboard, and then they could go and, when they've got the storyboard, they could then hire somebody to go and build it, or they might have internal capacity to do that themselves. Mm-hmm. But in my experience, the majority of clients don't want the hassle of that. They just want, they want somebody to, they want the solution. They want to go out and find somebody who's going to deliver it.
Okay, well, that's the majority. What about the minority? What do they want?
I'm not sure.
Right. Someone probably would value it. It sounds like the kind of thing that would be valuable. The same way that not everybody wants a blueprint, but a lot of people would value it. Mm-hmm. It sounds kind of like a blueprint department thing, where if you say, I'm an architect. I make blueprints. I can do all sorts of things to help you visualize your dream home, but I don't build it. I mean, first of all, would you even expect an architect to also have the skill set to build a house? Probably not. Would you expect someone who built a house to build your dream house to do so without a blueprint or some kind of elevations or painting, at least something like just start building? No. Like a plan is a plan. Like, and some people are going to value a plan and some people are not. But maybe there is maybe there isn't, but maybe there is a parallel in the e-learning space where there's value in having a blueprint. And and the blueprint itself has value. It's not just that it's maybe someday going to lead to your dream home that then you'll spend $1 million on. Having the blueprint has value unto itself. Not as much value as the house itself, but inarguably it has value. People want it. Some people, not everybody, almost nobody, in fact. Almost nobody wants a blueprint, but the people who want it would value it, because anything you want has value. Otherwise, you wouldn't want it. So if somebody wants to build a dream home and they want to do it with some kind of plan and not just have a builder start pounding nails, then they're going to value having a plan. So if someone who does storyboards if they encounter a client who isn't really sure what they want, maybe they're not even sure they want to make an investment into e-learning. Maybe they're not sure that that's the solution, and they want to get a more tangible representation of what it would look like, what their dream e-learning platform would look like before they commit to, I don't know, going to the board of directors and convincing them to cough up $250,000 to invest in this e-learning thing. There's probably someone out there that would want someone who is an expert at e-learning platforms to consult with them and get a professional diagnosis of the situation and then present a recommendation. Now, if I don't know if storyboards is that role, that sounds even maybe a little bit downstream from the overall architecture of an e-learning solution. But, if you are, what would you say in the building metaphor? Because I'm not really familiar with like the different e-learning roles, but if you can imagine a building metaphor where you've got, architects and you've got people that work for the architects to actually do, like maybe the architect hires someone to do a VR fly through of the 3D model of the house, so people can like put an Oculus on their head and like actually walk, not actually, but feel like they're walking through the finished home. The architect is not going to be a VR expert, but maybe the architect hires someone who does VR just for, architects. There's going to be people who are like maybe playing supportive roles along the way. And then the builder would get the architect, get the blueprints. And then there's going to be the general contractor. And then there's going to be like someone who's heading up the painting team and the framing team and the foundation and all of the different expertises that are involved in creating $1 million home. Where would you, if you would map like the storyboard person, is the storyboard person like the interior designer in this model, or is it someone who works? Is it someone who works in the architecture firm, or is it someone who works in for the general contractor?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, in the field of learning development, the first phase of work would be the diagnostic phase, which is which we call needs analysis. So if we relate that back to the architectural analogy, I don't even know whether it exists in that world, but it would be almost taking it back a step further. So somebody would come to you and they would say, I'm cold, every night it rains and I get wet. I need a solution. So the needs analysis would say, well, can you buy an umbrella? Or, is this like a long-term solution?
Yeah,
okay, well, we need something. Yeah, cheapest way to solve it with an umbrella. Well, hang on a minute. My kids are going to get wet, or okay. So we figure out we need a house. So that would be pretty much where that needs analysis phase in inverted commas would end, and at that point, that consultant, this is kind of like my role really. Mm-hmm. I would recommend a solution. So I would say, right, I think you need to build a house. I will then pass you on to an architect who will design the perfect house for you. And yes, I have, there's the capabilities to do that myself, but and whether this is two different people maybe becomes a bit blurry, but they're definitely two different roles. So there's the analysis diagnostic phase, the recommendation. This is the plan. So we are going to build, we're going to build a lovely house. It's going to have 2 levels. It's going to have a garage. Then we pass that on to the instructional designer, who is going to do the detail of, what type of bricks are we going to use? How many stairs is it going to have going up to the second floor? All that kind of stuff. And then that would go on to the e-learning developer, if you like, who would be the builder. So I'm going to choose the bricks. I'm going to put the cement together. I'm going to, I can tell I'm not very handy, but that's the person who actually physically builds it. So, and then just to touch on one other thing you said, hopefully that clears things up a little bit. But then one of the other things you said that really resonated was this VR person. So this this VR person is the exact type of person that I'm thinking about. So if this VR person is an expert in turning your architectural drawings into an Oculus experience that somebody can go through. Like, I guess this is kind of flipping it back on you really on this question, but like, would it make sense for that VR person to market themselves as I do VR walkthroughs for beachside properties versus, do you see where I'm going? Like,
beachside
would it make sense for him to?
Person.
No, it's a niche, right?
It's not a person, so no, it's not a niche.
Okay, so I guess my point is that if that VR person is marketing themselves,
if you said architects in Santa Barbara. Yeah. Okay. So you're kind of proving your point there by saying that if you're a VR person and you market yourselves to architects in Santa Barbara, you've got a higher chance of success with finding clients versus just saying I am a VR person who serves architects. Full stop. Yeah, it's more niched, right?
Yeah.
So you get a smaller pool of potential buyers. So anytime you get a smaller pool of potential buyers, that's niching down more.
Okay.
Yeah. So in I specifically mentioned the VR person because I wondered if your storyboard role could become globally recognized as a provider or like a solution provider delivering some kind of results to e-learning consultants or whoever the architect is. Whoever the architect of the e-learning solution is. Maybe there's like a best person in the world at doing, or like someone who delivers amazing results to e-learning consultants. And maybe that person, so it's like, it's somewhere, it's not at the top left corner. It's not the bottom right corner of the Etch-a-Sketch, but it's somewhat of a specialization and it's like, so I'm like, my pen is kind of like hovering around. It's in the top left quadrant, but not all the way in the corner, Okay. So it's like, it's sort of up there.
Yeah.
And
so this makes me feel like this is moving into the world of subcontracting. So this,
well, it depends. That's a couple, and in fact, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but there's a couple of things you've mentioned along the way that has everything to do with how you package your expertise, which is different. It's like a different way to look at the positioning stuff. So how you package your expertise means that you spent 10 years learning how to do something, whether it's playing drums or doing storyboards for instructional design, whatever. I'm probably using the wrong terms, but if you spent 10 years doing it, you've learned some things about how to do it. And you've got opinions probably. Maybe some of them are contrarian or iconoclastic or, novel, unique to you. You could sell those things to, especially if you're doing a niche style positioning where you're focusing on a particular target market or you're like moving in that direction. You can package that expertise up in ways other than actually doing it. So if I build brick walls for a living, I've been doing it for 10 years. I know everything about how to build brick walls. I could create probably a whole product ladder of things that do not include me stacking bricks, but are valuable to somebody. And if I am open if I put on my business owner hat instead of my bricklayer hat and you stop thinking about the activities of your craft and being obsessed with them like a hobby, like if this isn't a hobby and it's your business, then a really useful thing to do is to open up your mind, stop thinking that I'm someone who lays bricks, and start thinking I'm someone who knows how to lay bricks. And then say, okay, that's my expertise. My expertise is the piece that's separate from me doing the activity. So if you're an expert at storyboarding, you could probably package that up in a lot of different ways. It could be teaching other people how to do it. Like people who want to follow in your footsteps and in 10 years be an expert like you. It could be people who aren't ever planning to be an expert, but they want to do a good enough job on their own because they've got a really low budget. So they buy your, video course or something. So the packaging of the expertise is actually different from your strategic marketing, your positioning overall. So it's like they're related and they interact, but they're at different place on the continuum. So I hope I'm not like just confusing things, but that is it has been an undercurrent of a couple of things that you mentioned. Like early on, you sort of described a whole list of people who just want to do this, and it's like, well, unfortunately the world doesn't owe you a comfortable living for engaging in activities that you enjoy. Mm-hmm. Otherwise I'd be rich for playing bad drums. So are you essentially saying that for those types of people,
they need to, in order to build a successful business, they need to be able to deliver some form of end-to-end solution?
No, they need to deliver results that people want. And they need to do it in a way that's profitable to both parties. I don't think I've ever said that out loud, but that's the summary. Mm-hmm. They need to deliver results that people want that are profitable to both parties. So yeah.
In that example, then I feel like these hypothetical people I'm talking about who are just wanting to focus on their specific expertise are.
Can I pause? I'm sorry, I keep interrupting.
Yeah, please do.
But yeah, there's a lot of like language issues here. When you say focus on their specific expertise, that is different than focusing on the activities that they enjoy.
Yeah, no. So I am talking about, I'm not talking about necessarily what they enjoy. I'm talking about one part of this process that I've described. So if we go back to the architecture analogy, they just enjoy, the example you gave, the guy who likes building the wall. So he might enjoy building the wall, but that's his skill. He builds walls, right? So he has, are we calling that a specialization?
I would rephrase that. I never said he enjoyed building the wall. I said he's been building the wall for 10 years and he knows how to.
Okay.
Enjoy it doesn't even come in, enjoy it is an issue. It's a thing, but that has nothing to do with what I meant when I was talking about that. He has expertise at building walls. Whether or not he likes it, let's just assume he likes it or he would have stopped. But whether or not he likes it, let's say he does like it. In fact, the guy who built the stone wall in front of my house is exactly the guy I'm thinking of. So it wasn't brick, it's stone, but he's like 65 years old and he's humping like literal tons of stone by himself to stack up in front of my house. And I was like, dude, and he would work 10-hour days, 4 days a week, and complain about his back the whole time. And he was a nice guy, just amazing. He did like every house in our neighborhood. That's how I found him. And I said to him, why don't you try like some like 19-year-olds to do this? And he had all these reasons that he didn't want to do it. He had all these reasons that that was to him, that was like costly. That was painful, much more painful than his lower back. And he just loved humping the rocks around. If you love humping the rocks around for whatever it is that you do, you're going to trap yourself in your specialization, because as you build up your expertise, if you never relinquish the doing and start scaling up and creating leverage by teaching other people how to do it, or advising other people how it should be done, or overseeing other people who are doing it, you will be trapped under a ceiling. So I don't know if that was quite where you were going, but if you're addicted to the activities of the doing, then you probably want to niche down on people who are super rich, because your delivery is always going to be maximum costly.
Yeah.
Do you follow?
So yeah, I'm following definitely. But so in that example, I think I've been listening to too many of your podcasts because I've heard you talk about this guy before. But in that example, let's imagine you wanted to build a new house, right? You wouldn't necessarily hire him to build your house because he's very good at building walls, but you've got no kind of validation that he's good at anything beyond building a wall.
Right.
But so if he was marketing himself, so I think if we go right back to the beginning of the conversation when you talked about the Etch-a-Sketch, if he was to dial up the Etch-a-Sketch with his market vertical, his niche, and he said, I only build walls for dentists in wherever it is, right? And he says that's Or I mean that's a bad analogy, but he
had a specialization. He niched down on our neighborhood, like $1 million home neighborhood. Not that my house was $1 million, but like there are plenty of $1 million homes in my neighborhood.
Is that a niche or a specialization?
It's a niche. It's about the client.
Yeah. Okay. So he did niche, but if he was, I'm trying to put this in the context of a bigger project. So if he was, because that wall on its own is valuable, but whereas what I'm talking about, a storyboard on its own is not valuable. A wall.
Are you sure? You might be right. You might be right, but that seems far-fetched to me. If no one values it, why does anyone pay for it?
Well, okay. So in the context of building a house, a wall is valuable, but you would never hire somebody just to build the wall, right? You would hire somebody to build, or you would outsource the decision making of building a house to somebody else. So you would hire somebody who would say, right, I'm going to find the person to build the wall. I'm going to find the person to build the roof. I'm going to find the person to put in the windows. Yeah. That's still valuable, that specialization of building the walls. But to you as the end client who is building a new house, you don't want to be going out there and finding these individual people to do all of these specialization.
Right.
You want somebody else
client.
To do that.
Right. So the guy that's framing the addition on my house is not, I'm not his client. The general contractor is his client.
Yeah. So that, so he's the person building a wall or doing the framing is subcontracting to the the company that you've hired to build your house.
Right.
So this is a great line of conversation because it takes us right back to the beginning and where we said, well, if that person is, that person who's building a wall and he wants to, let's imagine that building a wall in and of itself isn't a valuable specialization. Apart from to come up to, for a solution of building a house, right? That's the end goal, is to build a house. How does that person who is building the wall market himself directly to a client? Or is he always going to be in a situation where he has to be a subcontractor because his specialization is only valuable as the sum of several parts?
Well, you got to understand who your buyer is. So if you are, let's say, okay, here's an example from my actual life. So let's say you do custom cabinets, right? Is that a fair? You do kitchen cabinets. Mm-hmm. Is that a fair analogy to like the person building a wall?
Yep, definitely.
Okay, so I do kitchen cabinets, right? Who's my client? I'm probably not. Well, kitchen cabinets, that's probably not a bad example. That is a bad example because sometimes homeowners do hire kitchen cabinet people. So let's say framing walls. As a homeowner, I am never going to hire someone to frame walls. It'd be extremely weird to hire someone to frame walls. So you're going to hire, so the person who does wall framing is going to get hired by the builder.
Yeah.
Right? That it's not going to be on the homeowner to pick somebody who does a good job framing walls. So it's the thing that you need to do, the thing that you would want to do if we're looking to get more better clients, again, back to the beginning, more better clients, and I am like an expert at framing walls for some reason. I know nothing about this. I know not even enough to be dangerous, but there's got to be some expertise there. There's got to be some kind of situation where framing walls is critically important. You want to sell to the builders who are building stuff where wall framing is critically important, where you are better, you're highly specialized, you're world famous for framing walls, and the best builders in the world are going to talk about you They might not even want to share your name because they want to book you solid themselves and not let any of their competitors get access to you. And you frame walls that in a way that nobody else does. Maybe you're framing walls on the freaking space station. I don't know. But it's the same thing. If you're picking any kind of, if you just talk about the specialty, some kind of specific, like framing walls on a residential home is not a specialization. Like you'd need to have some kind of wall construction that is like bizarre. Like it would make us laugh if we could even think of it. You know, like on the space station, for example, or like an, evil genius under a volcano layer.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you need to like potentially protect from a nuclear fallout? I design those kind of walls, or I build those kinds of walls. Then, all right, like there's no competition, or there's a lot less competition. If you're just talking about like 2x4 framing of a residential home, that's not a specialization. So if you're unspecialized, if you're a commoditized framer, then what kind of houses do you want to be working in? Multi-million-dollar homes, because you want to be working with builders who have a lot of extra money laying around, who are going to be worried about things like you showing up on time, being sober, not swearing, not tracking mud into the $1 million home, all of these things that are around the actual framing, so that you would hyper specialize on all of the things that are the experience of working with a wall framer in a residential home. But for people who are doing like $50 million homes or castles or something, and you are going to not embarrass them in front of the client, or you're not going to give them headaches that they don't have the patience to deal with. So if you're just a generalist wall framer that pounds 2x4s together, then you're going to want to be working with builders who are the richest possible builders, and then differentiate yourself in a way that's meaningful to them, so that you don't seem like a garden variety wall framer. Even if a framed wall can only be so perfect, your responsiveness, professionalism, demeanor, attractiveness, I don't know, the clothes that maybe you wear a 3-piece suit, like whatever you need to do so that it's going to make them look good, and they're going to pay your exorbitant rates for framing these walls, because you're meaningfully different from other people who also frame walls.
Okay. So sorry to interrupt. So how does that wall framer, are you saying then that wall framer should market themselves not just as I'm a specialist in framing walls and I've got this great technique that nobody else has? You're saying that they should market themselves with a market vertical as well?
I'm saying, I was giving 2 examples. One is that they're actually a commodity wall framer in terms of the specialization. Like they do a great job, but they could, the builder could get a lot of people to do a great job. But since the wall framer is focused on people who are building mansions, and they understand that audience, and they understand that when the princess comes into the house to see how the construction is going, they don't want some guy smoking and farting and like drinking beers on the job site. And they know that the builder knows that if they hire me, they're going to get good walls. Duh, that's table stakes. But it's also going to impress the princess. Like, I'm not going to embarrass the builder in front of the princess. So that would, to me, that's a niche focus, not very specialized. But you've added differentiators that are meaningful to this very specific buyer. You're speaking their language. You do not want to be embarrassed when the homeowner comes through to check out the site. Okay, or the realtor or anybody else. So that was the niche angle. And then the walls in the space station or the nuclear fallout bunker, that's a specialization thing that would be valuable to people who want walls in a nuclear bomb shelter or a space station, where you are literally one of fewer than 10 people in the world who can do a credible job of building walls on the space station or in a bunker to withstand radiation.
Got it. Okay. No, that's really becoming clear now. So I think what I'm understanding is that even though the client, the person who's building this, the person who's paying for this new home to be built, is paying the I don't know what that role would it be, the builder or so let's say that so they're paying the general contractor an exorbitant amount of money to build this house, and therefore the wall framer is actually technically subcontracting because they are working directly for the general contractor. You're still saying that wall framer needs to, in that example, needs to market themselves as a wall framer for $1 million homes, because the general contractor will be looking for the best the best wall framer for that project, and therefore that's how they will connect the dots.
Yeah, well, as the wall framer, you would connect the dots in your marketing, but you just need to understand that the princess is not your buyer, that the general contractor is your buyer. So the thing that is, if there's something easy about the niching approach to positioning, I almost said specialization. The niching approach to positioning is the easiest thing about it. It's easy even for new people who are new to positioning, which is like what's so great about it, is that you can make a list, an actual list of people's names who would be your dream buyers, your dream clients. So you could almost certainly do some research online or on online, LinkedIn, subreddits, marketing websites, just Google around, and you could probably find 100 general contractors who build multi-million-dollar homes. You could reach out to realtors in affluent neighborhoods and say, hey, who did the reno on Humphrey Bogart's mansion? And you could say, all right, here's this list of people. I'm going to reach out to them directly. I'm going to say, hey, maybe first you would set up your marketing to be super premium, and when I say super premium, I don't mean it needs to be expensive, but just not crappy like all the other wall framers websites or totally ridiculous LinkedIn profiles, but just like look professional and say, hey, I'm super actually, let's even back up because I'm already making assumptions. Let's back up. They reach out to those people and say, what do you look for in a wall framer? Find out what that list of 100 people, maybe it's just 20 people. You get 20 people out of 100 to jump on a phone call and say, hey, I'm a wall framer. I want to start working on good houses. I don't want to stop. I don't want to, I don't want to keep working on these like McMansions. I want to do some like really good work that I'm proud of. What do you look for when you're looking for a wall framer? Find out what they care about. Understand what they want. The key is to find out what they want. And you say, oh, I can deliver that. I can deliver those kinds of results. And I'm guessing, again, this is assumptions. I'm guessing they're going to want someone who is punctual, someone who brings their own tools, someone who is presentable, someone who's not going to be embarrassing, someone who's not coarse, someone who doesn't have a junky car. I'm not going to show up in front of your house in a beat up 1987 Corolla. I'm just guessing about things that maybe the custom general contractors care about. But if you find out what they care about, and then you reflect that back in whatever you're doing for marketing, whether it's outreach via email or your LinkedIn profile or a website or direct mail or a cold calling, a combination of all these things, you present that picture that you deliver what general contractors who work on multi-million-dollar homes want in a wall framer. And you'd be like, yeah, I'm the one you can trust. Anybody can build you a wall. But if you care about these additional things, these other things that aren't directly part of the wall building process, then I'm your guy. I'm not the cheapest. I'll probably be the most expensive, but I'm not going to embarrass you in front of the princess. So you decide. If you could make a list of 100 people and get on the phone with 20 and then come up to some of the answers to those questions and then reach back out to the 100 with your new marketing, I'd be shocked if you didn't land one of them. And then, boom, word of mouth, because now you're in a small pond.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess the immediate objections that I'm coming up with when I think about this is that the general contractor, may already have, and in kind of a typical e-learning agency will go out to the market to find an instructional designer, and they will have set rates on, how much they pay for that. So I would imagine the general contractor would also, we pay $1,000 a day for a wall framer, and therefore this context, this example we're giving here makes it difficult for me to imagine that a wall framer can then charge, do things like value pricing and things like that, because they're limited within, the the limited by the competition of what else is out there. Obviously, you're giving examples of reasons that they're different, and the differentiators between what me who turns up on time and doesn't come in wearing dirty clothes, and all those examples you gave. But is that I guess it's about finding enough meaningful differences to be able to command higher prices in the eyes of that general contractor.
Yep. And now that brings up the max price formula, because you're 100% right. If the buyer doesn't see a meaningful difference between you and the next thing that you are, you and the next wait, what did we say? And I almost said industrial designer, instructional designer. If they don't see a meaningful difference, then yeah, they're going to pick the cheapest one. Why wouldn't they? So it's your job to create a meaningful difference. That's positioning. So if they see you as the only available option, then you will not face that kind of downward pricing pressure, because it's apples to oranges. It's not apples to apples. If you put yourself out there as I'm just another instructional designer, then you're gonna have downward pricing pressure. But if you are the wall framer, just another wall framer, well, yeah, there's a air quotes market price for a garden variety wall framer. But if you're the $1 million wall framer, and that's the only thing that's going to suffice for Harry and Meghan's new condo in LA or wherever they are, then you're going to get the gig. But you need to have a meaningful difference. And here's another thing that is a tempting thing to say. You've said it at least twice so far. It's very common. Most people won't do that. Most people won't pay more for a instructional designer. Yeah, no kidding. You don't want most people. You want the cream of the crop. Mm-hmm. Of course, most people won't. Yes, that's normal. Most people don't want one at all, never mind an expensive one. Mm-hmm. So the fact that anybody wants an instructional designer at all is a miracle into itself. So you have to imagine, I could be wrong, but there might be someone out there who's doing $1 billion, maybe Facebook is making $1 billion investment in e-learning to attract the top talent away from Google. And they don't want to risk that investment. And some generalist e-learning firm that's world famous, you could probably name the most famous one right off the top of your head, is going to get the gig for sure. So they land the gig, and now they've got all this money, and they've got all this risk. We can't screw this up. This is a high profile gig. We cannot screw this up. We want to hire the best in the business for every aspect of this build. Then, if that doesn't exist, then maybe we're talking about buggy whips here. But I don't think we're talking about buggy whips. I think e-learning is a growing slice of the market. I think it's a growing space. So it doesn't seem like, I'm the best switchboard operator in the world. Who wants to pay me lots of money to operate your switchboard? That's a no. Probably nobody. Actually, there probably is somebody, but that because the world is so big. But in general, that's a tough sell, I think. But I feel like e-learning is a growing space. There's got to be people who are investing loads of money to build a, air quotes, $1 million home in the e-learning space, who probably care about the experience of working together. And they want responsiveness, they want professionalism, they want excellence, and they expect to pay for it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and it's a dead-end job. I don't know what to tell you at that point, but it doesn't seem like that to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So a lot to think about. But thank you for explaining that all to me. It's a very simple concept, but I guess when you apply it to your own industry and environment, it's sometimes can become quite difficult to kind of visualize and then lay out.
Yeah, it's tough to see the forest for the trees. So I think if there's to wrap up, I think the thing that keeps people trapped and not able to apply this stuff to themselves, it's not just that they can't see the forest for the trees, although it's a lot of that, which is normal. That's fine. That's why you get outside help and you ask people's opinion and maybe get coaches and stuff who have a broader perspective and have experienced lots of different careers, and helping people with lots of different careers. So that's normal to be kind of trapped by the details and the specifics. But the two things that really keep people paralyzed are not wanting to niche down, because honestly, of all the things we talked about, that is by far the easiest one for a early career freelancer to do. That is the easiest one. It's got the clearest path. It gives you the most feedback along the way. You can correct your course along the way. It's easiest. The other thing is that people are, so that's one thing, fear of niching down. And the other thing is seeing themselves only as a doer, someone who does the craft and not someone who knows how to do the craft, and create and packaging that expertise in a variety of ways, most of which are not them actually doing it, which creates leverage. Both things create leverage, and leverage translates to profits. So if you have leverage, it means that you're, like literal leverage. Like if you picture a lever and I push down on a lever, I can lift up a car that I could never lift with my hands. Why does that happen? Because the force that I use to push down on the long end of the lever is multiplied on the short end of the lever on the other side of the fulcrum. So a small application of force on one side creates a large application of force on the other side. That's profitability. That's not trading time for money. That's margins. That's leverage. So like all of those things are basically the same concept. Mm-hmm. So if you package, if you only want to do your activities, you're really limiting yourself. And at a certain point, when you feel like you're really good at what you do, you could find people who want to be good at what you do and teach them how to do it. That's the most obvious second step, like first step into creating leverage. Just teach people how to do what you do. That's the simplest one. The next, another simple one, but not as simple, is to teach people who don't actually want to become good at what you do. They don't want to become they're not a mini you. They're not a mini learning designer. They're not a mini wall framer, but they just want to do it themselves. They want to DIY, kind of like Home Depot style. And then you could create some sort of educational product for them. Or you could have some kind of oversight of people who are doing the work, but you've been doing it for 10 years. So you can tell when it's being done correctly and when it's not being done correctly. So you're kind of like an architect walking the job site to make sure that the nails are going in the right place. So there's all these different ways that you can apply your expertise or sell your expertise if you're willing to think bigger about the activities that you engage in and not just be the person who has to do it. And there's this mindset that if I'm not actually doing it, then I'm not delivering any value. And that's just patently false. Mm-hmm. If that were true, then design wouldn't exist.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. So that you're saying that to kind of sum up, the first challenge is getting over that fear of picking a niche and diving headfirst into that. And then the second one is thinking of yourself more in terms of I rather than I do this skill for a living, is I have the knowledge of how to do that, and then I can convert that into a product ladder of info products and teaching people how to do it and yeah.
Yep, training, info products, advisory services, consulting, all that stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Got it. Okay, brilliant.
Jeez, yeah. Hopefully that was helpful. I felt like I ranted more than I expected.
No, really, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for such a great question. Where can people find out more about what you're doing?
So my main website is antpugh.com, P-U-G-H. I'm pretty much, I think, the only person with that name on the internet, so it should be easy to find. And the L&D community that we've launched is called Propeller with an A, and that's wearepropeller.com.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks for coming on, Ant.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for explaining that to me.
All right, folks, that's it for this time. I'm Jonathan Stark, and I hope you join me again next time for Ditching Hourly. Bye. Hey, Jonathan again. Are you a self-employed professional who's ready to start getting paid what you're worth? You can learn how to stop billing and start pricing in the pricing seminar. It's more than 30 lessons shared over 12 weeks and reinforced with experiential asynchronous group discussion. And best of all, there's a money-back guarantee. The next session launches on March 8th, 2021. So if you're listening to this before March 8th, run, don't walk over to thepricingseminar.com and look for the little blue bird for a nice discount. Hope to see you there.